Okay, welcome everybody. So glad to have everybody join us again for our monthly Lunch and Learn series. As we mentioned, when we talked about this month last month, we are going to have a slight departure from a raptor specific talk. While raptors will be a part of it, it's more of a general birding and bird conservation topic that's really vital and one of very high importance. So we're very excited to welcome a good friend of mine, Gail Walter from the Southwest Michigan area. Julie Brown will introduce her shortly, but before we get to that, I'd just like to go over a few housekeeping items. First of which, as you know, we're all here together on Zoom. You will notice that you do not have the ability to unmute yourself. That is on purpose. And what we would like you to do is at the bottom of your screen, open up your chat window. And please engage with us. Do one of two things for us. One, most importantly, ask any questions for Gail through your chat window. The famous Julie Brown will monitor that chat and make sure she copies down all the questions that you ask. And she will facilitate those questions and answers with Gail at the end of the program, much like we always do. The second thing you can do, though, is, again, engage with us by just telling us who you are and where you're calling or joining us from, and maybe what your closest Hawkwatch migration site is. We'd love to hear from you. And again, thank you for joining us. Lastly, in terms of Zoom, if you're not, you're not particularly liking the view you do have some options in the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom window. If you click on View, you do have a few options between things like gallery and speaker view to customize the experience how you'd like. So feel free to do that. Again, please use the chat to engage with us, ask questions of Gail. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our programs director, Julie Brown, who will introduce Gail. So Julie, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Josh, and thanks everybody for joining today. We're happy to welcome Gail. And Gail Walter is a certified health and wellness coach, a retired veterinary clinical pathologist, and is a volunteer with several local conservancy organizations. She is currently a board member of the Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy and the Audubon Society of Kalamazoo. She's a member of the Kalamazoo Environmental Concerns Committee, Wild Ones, Native Landscapers, and Michigan Botanical Club. Gail has been driving the driving force behind the Peregrine Falcon Cam in downtown Kalamazoo and serves as the liaison between the peregrines and the building owners, the tenants, the media, the DNR, and the public. Gail and her husband are active hikers, cross-country skiers, birders, canoers. So we're thrilled to have you here with us today, Gail, talking about a very important topic, and I can't wait to learn more. So go right ahead.
Well, thank you both, Josh and Julie. I'm happy to be here, and thank you to all those who have joined us on their lunch hour and willing to spend some time with us here. So I am going to be talking about, as Josh said, a topic that's not typically one that you have had before, but I have an assistant here. My friend Rebecca is going to help me along with this presentation. And since you're all raptor people, I'm sure you know what category Rebecca falls into. Okay, let's see here. So the title of my talk is is bird-friendly building design, and Josh and Julie didn't give you this, but the real title is How to Save a Billion Birds for $1.98. So I'm going to talk about how to do that before we're done with this presentation. And I also want to acknowledge, for some reason, this is not wanting to advance. What am I doing wrong? I want to acknowledge the American Bird Conservancy. I've learned about bird window collisions a lot from them. And they, of course, are a 501c3 organization that you are probably quite familiar with. And they work in the Americas. Their mission is to build capacity for birds by a number of different ways of halting extinctions, protecting habitats, and eliminating threats. And window collisions are certainly a threat. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I have gotten a lot of the parts of this presentation from them, and they've been very generous in sharing this with me and encouraging me to share it with other audiences. There is also a companion presentation which is available for, if there's anyone interested in this, if you have family members or you yourself are an architect, an AIA architect, or in the building trades and are lead professional, you can get continuing education credits for this. So how did I go from being a veterinary pathologist to an advocate for bird safe building design? Because that's not your usual career progression in my field. So how that happened was this little guy. I have been, as Julie said, the liaison between our local peregrine falcons and the rest of the community, and we keep pretty close tabs on these guys when they're getting ready to fledge, because oftentimes they get themselves out of the nest a little bit early, and then they end up on the ground or in some place that they really shouldn't be. So that's what happened to this little guy. As you can see, he's still pretty downy, and he managed to get himself out of the nest box a few days early. So he's in a carrier and he's going to go to flight school for a week or so. So he did really well, and he came home, reunited with his family, which is always happens. So he was flying really well in downtown Kalamazoo with his siblings, and I got a call a couple days later that he had been found at the base of these windows. This is just a block from what I call Peregrine Central and the nest box. And as you can see from these windows, you can see the reflection of the trees and the clouds and the sky in these windows. And these windows actually extend below ground. There is a seating area below that, a little area with some tables and chairs. So the residents at the School of Medicine can sit out there and enjoy this little space. And if you look over that railing, oftentimes you will see dead birds. So that to me was a real wake-up call and a real heartbreaker, to have a bird that I had handled, had done really well, and for its life to be cut short. So I've known about building collisions for a long time, and it's always something I said I was going to get into when I retired, when I was between projects, when I had more time, and this motivated me into taking action now. So we all know that birds are pretty significant all the way around the world. They mean different things to different cultures. They can mean freedom or happiness or peace. But birds also provide a lot of ecosystem services for us. They're responsible for habitat regeneration because they will be able to fly into these areas that have been, say, burned over and deposit some seeds. They are consummate pest consumers, and so they are consuming pests that could otherwise harm agricultural crops or cause diseases to animals or humans, such as West Nile virus, equine encephalitis, Zika virus, those kinds of things. And bird watching is a very financially lucrative industry. There are over 45 billion people who count themselves as birders in the US. And so in addition to traveling, which people may not have been doing a lot in the last couple of years, and spending money in hotels and restaurants, birders are still buying equipment. They're buying binoculars and spotting scopes and tripods and sensible footwear and dorky hats. So birders really contribute to the economy. There are a lot of things that can cause human-related bird mortality, in addition to buildings and glass. So we estimate that 1 billion birds a year will collide with glass in the US alone. The only anthropogenic cause that is direct cause, other than habitat loss or climate change are outdoor cats. And that's another whole talk, but outdoor cats are responsible for killing billions of birds each year. Getting data from other structures that birds collide into is very difficult. You know, cell towers and power lines and wind turbines are all in remote areas. They're oftentimes on private property. They're fenced off. Even if you wanted to monitor them, it would be very difficult. And there's also a lot of very savvy scavengers that know where to go to find a quick meal. And I've seen these birds disappear within minutes. To see a mole dragging a junco down its hole about a minute after it hit a pane of glass. So most of the birds that do succumb to window collisions are songbirds, and they migrate at night, but they more often collide during the day. And we don't see as many of them as there probably are because of the scavengers, for one thing, or they flutter off into some shrubbery. We don't see them. We think they fly off safely, only to have them die of injuries at a later time, you know, in some location where they're not seen. So what is the problem? The problem is birds don't see glass. And so for the birders on the call, use your chat to tell us what species of bird this is. And Julie will tally up the answers and we'll see how you do. So this is bird number 1. So as you can see from this, this is the Community Foundation in downtown Kalamazoo. We've got a lot of glass. We've got a glass corner. We have got trees inside this atrium area, so you can see through the glass. So as people, we don't see glass either, but we should learn because there is a door frame and a door handle. You know, we've learned that there's probably a solid object here, but birds don't have that ability to learn that. I want to talk a little bit about the difference between how birds and how humans see. So we are like primates. We have flat faces. Our eyes are in the front of our face. So theoretically, we are moving through our environment in the same direction that we're looking. Not everybody does that, but you should be able to do that. Birds, on the other hand, as you can see, they have their eyes on the side of their heads. So their most acute vision is not forward, it's to the side. And they have the ability, of course, to see behind them and see in many different directions. And they actually can judge how fast they're going and their speed by the objects, how fast the objects are going by them on the side. So their most acute vision is not necessarily to the front. Oops, going the wrong way here. So as I said, people can't see glass either, but they should have learned the cues. Yeah, my forward is not working here so well, so I'm trying to do this by my mouse. So anyway, you know, if we see the exit sign and we see symbols on the glass, we see shrubs out here, but we understand that there is a barrier between us and those shrubs. But birds do not understand that. And as you can see, the people in this little video walking into the glass, which I have done myself. So we just don't see it either, but hopefully we've learned. But birds will see a reflection on a surface like this, and to them, the trees that are reflected on that surface are as real as the trees in the park, because birds don't speak architecture. They don't understand it. To birds, reflections are real. So this wall of windows, even though there are shades pulled down inside this room, those reflections are so strong that it's very confusing to a bird. Birds don't see glass as barriers. This is the Ford Foundation in downtown New York. And there are more trees in this atrium than there are for blocks around. So this is a very hazardous attraction for birds. They see those trees on those shrubs and they want to be able to light there and you know, take a rest. So I'm sure we've all had an experience where, you know, you're outside, you're looking at your own house or some house, and depending on the time of day and the angle of the sun, the window is going to look different at different times of the day. So there's sometimes you can see through the window, and there are other times you only see the reflection on the surface of the window. So builders call this outside of the window is surface one. And so the reflections on surface one are so strong sometimes that even if a bird can't see through the room, they're confused by the reflections on the surface. So there's a lot that we don't know about birds and window collisions. And so we're learning all the time. This is a collection of birds that was done by an organization in Toronto called FLAP, or Fatal Light Awareness Program. They have a very active monitoring program. So they monitor downtown Toronto, and they collect the birds that have collided with windows down there. And then every year they take all of the birds that they have collected and frozen, and they make a montage out of them. And so it's quite the spectacle when you see this. So we do know that the more glass there is, the more chance there are for collisions. And lights at night, of course, disorient birds in the built environment as well. And this is the 9/11 Memorial in New York. And all of these little white dots that you see moving around to this. Birds are attracted to these areas of light at night. And so they'll come down, you know, during migration, and they'll land. And hopefully they land safely. That's not always the case, but then during the day, they need to scavenge, to rest, to feed, so they can continue their migration journey. What we do know is that the landscape that surrounds a building is more important than the orientation of the building. So it doesn't matter if these windows are facing north or south or east or west, but it's the reflection of those plants that you see in the lower 3 stories of a building that are responsible for window collisions. So if you were a bird hopping around in the shrubbery and you were startled by a dog or a bus, you're as likely to fly into the shrubs that you see in this window as you are to fly across the street to the park. Glass corners, we saw in the previous example of the Community Foundation, create a hazard because you can see through and see the shrubbery through that. Channeling is another challenge for birds. So if this was an outside exhibit, like at a zoo or a museum with multiple buildings, you know, people are channeled by the pathways and by the vegetation led to the next exhibit, led to the next building. But birds will follow this pathway as well. And if you get to the end of the path and there is a door, a glass door to enter into the building, you understand that. A bird will just fly perhaps right into that glass door. So here's a local example of channeling. So again, this is bird number 2. You can respond in your chat what bird this is. I am in a stairwell. I seem to spend a lot of time in stairwells looking out. I've gotten a call about this this finding, and so here's the stairwell, and here is the poor victim, and this is where those bubbles were. So I'm not the photographer that Josh is, so this was hard to get a picture of, but this is downtown Kalamazoo. There's the parking structure is on the left. There is this stair tower in the middle, and you can see the reflection on the windows of the sky and the tree. And of course, these stair towers are lit up at night. The lights are on. And On the right-hand side, which I could not get a picture of, is another building. So this is kind of just almost an alleyway between two buildings. And so a bird flying through here has a choice of going through this open space of sky or flying into this window. And that unfortunate bird made the wrong decision. Another dangerous area for birds are courtyards and open atria. Just as you might be attracted to going out here during your lunch hour and enjoying the shade and the water feature and having lunch, a bird might fly in here for those same reasons. Enjoy the water, look for some bugs, enjoy the shade. But when they go to leave, they need to helicopter up out of this space. They don't always understand that. And of course, these atria are surrounded by windows because that's the point. If you're in this building, it's nice to look out and see this kind of natural area in the middle of the building. So there's a lot of things that are made out of glass: breezeways, parking structures, smoking structures, bus stops, railings. All of these things create hazards for birds, because if you're a bird flying through the atmosphere, the last thing you expect to do is to run into a solid object that you can't see. So here I am in another parking structure, and I'd gotten a call from somebody, and those calls usually start with, "I hate to tell you this, but I found one of your peregrine falcons, you know, somewhere." And so this is a parking garage for one of the local hospitals, and sure enough, I found the bird, which was thankfully not a peregrine falcon, at the base of these windows adjacent to the stairwell. And of course, like I said, the stairwells are lighted at night. They always have windows so the light will come in. The windows keep the snow, as you can see, snow and rain off of the treads. And windows also create some safety, so less likely to get people lurking in the stairwell. So it feels a lot safer. But if this Cooper's hawk, which I have found at the base of these windows, this open space was just a few feet away. And if these windows had had some kind of a pattern on them to alert the bird that this was a solid object, that might have saved its life. It probably flew into this parking structure chasing a pigeon and got confused inside and made the wrong choice of where to leave. So there's just a couple slides that if you are note takers or you want to really remember something, this is one of the slides. So we have what we used to call the 2x4 rule, and now we sort of call it the 2x2 rule. But a bird will try to fly through any space, and this is the average songbird. Obviously, hummingbirds are smaller, and doves are bigger, but any space the size of your fist. And so if you create a pattern in or on glass that is no bigger than 2x4, that will alert the birds that this is a solid object and decrease the possibility of them flying through it. We have, through studies, have learned that actually even a smaller space than 2x4, say a 2x2 or 2x3, is more effective. And how do we know that? This is a testing tunnel that is used by the ABC. This is outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so at the end of the tunnel, you can see these glass window panels. And if you look through the tunnel, what you see is the set of windows at the end. And one of the windows will be just clear glass, and the other one will have a pattern on it that is being tested. So people who are creating window films or glass will submit their product to be tested. And so a bird is caught in a mist net, and it volunteers to fly through this tunnel one time, and the bird is observed. If the bird flies towards the clear window, it means it has seen the pattern on the testing window. There is a screen and a netting before the bird gets to the end of the tunnel, and so the bird is not hurt. It's caught and then released. And so this is how products have been scored. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So this is just one quick example from a few years ago at the University of Minnesota. They redid this plaza and decided to put in these glass or plexiglass railings around the edge of the plaza. It was completed in the fall during migration, and 40 birds hit in a 3-hour period of time. So that got people's attention. The facilities guys ran out with their painter's tape and they taped up the windows to create a pattern. And then the staff installed this bird tape, which is they're installing it at 4-inch intervals in a vertical pattern. And this is what it looks like installed. And that was effective. No more birds hit those windows. And so, you know, it's something that you can see through, but the birds recognize that this is a pattern. So in order to be effective, of course, the pattern has got to be visible. One thing that works very well, as you can see on the left-hand side of this window, there's maybe you can't see it, but it's not reflective. And there's just a regular insect screen, which is a very effective way to decrease window collisions. And then just different types of tape have been put on the same window as an example. Black tape on the left and white tape on the right. There's some tape on the inside of the window and some tape on the outside of the window. When the tape is on the inside of the window, you can still see the reflections of the vegetation and the trees. When it's on the outside of the window, it's more visible and it breaks up that reflection. So in order to be effective, you really want your fix to be on surface one. So the question is, how about internal blinds and shades? Do those help? They do help. They obviously don't do anything to change the reflection on surface one, but if you have vertical blinds or horizontal blinds, and you have them in a half open position, birds can see that as a pattern. If you shut the shades, at least they cannot see through the building or see into the building. And so if that's the only option that you have, it certainly can help. There's a lot of communities that now have legislation and ordinances or guidelines about bird safe building design. San Francisco was the first city in the US to enact a bird safe building standard. And we know now the San Francisco standard, which is on the right, which required treatment on the side of a building that faced a park or a green roof or a water feature. We know now that's not quite enough. And this is the lead is the leadership in engineering and environmental design. You've heard a reference, I'm sure, to buildings that are being built by LEED standards. You'll hear LEED gold or LEED silver or LEED platinum. Well, credits are available for people who are building and building a building that fits the LEED standards. So you can actually get credits towards your LEED certification by using bird safe building design. And they break the building into different zones. As I said, the lower 3 stories of a building are actually the ones that are most dangerous for birds, because that's where the birds are, in the vegetation or in the trees. And so they get, there's more credit in those zones than the other zones. So I've thrown around this term a lot. What is a bird-friendly building? So let's talk about that. The building on the left has a big reflective surface. And you can see the clouds, you can see the trees reflected on the surface of that building. And it's really difficult to tell from here which are the real trees and which are reflected on the surface of the building. So this is going to be confusing for birds as well. The building on the right, on the other hand, is lovely from the perspective of a bird safe building design. There's nothing reflective that is going to be confusing. There are no windows. There is no way to misinterpret this as anything other than a solid object. Here are a couple of parallel examples. The Viking Stadium on the left is 200,000 square feet of reflective glass. And this MetLife Stadium on the right in New Jersey is also made out of glass, but in front of the glass are these louvers. And so the louvers are put up, I'm sure, to decrease, even out the light that comes into the building so you don't get glare. It helps with shading for climate control, but it also serves as a signal to the birds that this is a solid object, and it is a lot less confusing. So you can make a building out of glass and have it be bird safe. So this museum has used glass that is embedded with ceramic frit. So you can see the vertical pattern in the glass. And so this is effective at alerting the birds that this is a building. So this is the other slide that I will ask you to remember the points. So how to design a bird-friendly building. There are 3 strategies to remember. Number 1, reduce the exposure to glass. So that is, have something like those louvers in front of the glass so the bird can't fly at full speed into the glass. Incorporate signals in or on the glass, like we saw with those fritted designs, or minimize the use of glass, like we saw from that cement building that didn't have any glass. But bird-friendly design also overlaps with a lot of other features that are desirable in the building trades today. So, glare control, a design aesthetic, thermal control, energy efficiency, security. So a lot of reasons that these might be desirable features in addition to being safer for birds. So these are a couple of buildings that use those LEED credits in their design. If you are ever out to Salt Lake City, I can just give you great advice to go to Tracy Aviary. It's a wonderful facility, and all of the glass in their facility is bird safe. So you can see on the outside, it's got this fun grid work in front of the building. The Vassar Science Center was built over a stream with a lot of vegetation around it, but they chose to use bird safe glass and have not had a problem with bird collisions. And these other 2 buildings also incorporated bird safe glass. Here's some examples of buildings that reduced their exposure to glass with louvers or movable shutters and shades. The New York Times has this grid in front of it, which they put up for glare and climate control, not for birds, but it's effective for that. In downtown Kalamazoo, this is a theater. Behind these louvers is a wall of glass, but these louvers are up for a design and to decrease, I'm sure, the amount of light that enters into the lobby of this theater. And the birds know that this is a solid object, and they'll slow down and land on it and build their nests behind it so they don't collide with the glass. An example from New Zealand, which was under construction when I was there a few years ago, which I thought was a really fun design, and hopefully the birds will understand this as well. In Kalamazoo, here's another example of some bird safe design. So this particular building on Kalamazoo College campus doesn't have very many windows at all, but the front entranceway, they chose to use fritted glass. So this is all ceramic frit, was a design that was custom made for them. Highway rest stop. From a distance, if you're inside this space and looking out at the parking lot, on the left, it looks like just a regular glass window. But when you get your nose up to it really close, you can see this dot array. And again, the birds will see this as a solid object. And this is similar to, I'll talk about this coming up quickly, the window perforations and the bus wraps that you've probably seen on a lot of storefronts or commercial buildings or buses. When you're inside the space, from a distance, you can see out very clearly. But when you're outside the window, you'll see the advertisement or the design that is being featured. Here's an example of some frosted glass that would be very effective at alerting birds that this is a solid window. I'm talking about ultraviolet a bit because many bird species see into the ultraviolet range, which we're not able to do. But there are manufacturers of glass that incorporate ultraviolet, which we can't see, but birds can. So a local example in Kalamazoo is the Nature's Way preschool. And if you're inside the building and looking out their patio into the woods, this looks like just a regular window. But when you get an angle on it from outside, this is Ornalex glass in this kind of pickup stick pattern. And the birds will be able to see this, at least birds that see ultraviolet light. And this has avoided window collisions. So you can buy these ultraviolet stickers. You've probably seen them in different stores or online. You put them on the outside of your window and the birds can see them, and you can prevent bird collisions, similar to the hawk silhouettes. So I always like to test the products that are on the market. So this is my house. So we've got, and so I'm a little bit more obsessed than some people might just stick one in the middle of a window, but here we've got 4, one here, one here, one here, one here. And then what is this thing here circled in red? Well, this was a mourning dove, which flew between the decals and flew from a very close range because it's just from my patio, and it was at the bird bath and was not hurt. So I just wanted to show the effectiveness of these decals, because again, this violates the 2x4 rule. You can see the strong reflection of the trees on the surface of this window. There's a lot of space around these decals and enough space that a bird is going to be able to fly through them. So if you wanted to use these decals, you really need to cover the surface of the window with the decals in order for it to be effective. There's a number of companies that make films available that you can buy, custom films or off-the-shelf films that are effective in reducing window collisions. And so these are a couple of ones that are made by Solex. And this fun one down here on the bottom left is at a school of music. So someone there came up with a design. They had a design contest, and this is what was chosen. So it's bird silhouettes on this musical staff. And so this was made up for them by the company and installed on the outside of the window. This is the bear exhibit at the Pittsburgh Zoo, I believe. And so big windows where people can look out at the exhibit, but birds kept hitting the windows. So they designed this. You can see the very faint horizontal lines. Then at the top, it looks like frosted glass, and there are, a design of birds and leaves and various different natural looking things on the top that looks like frosted glass. So this prevents the birds from flying into this window. This is a do-it-yourself product that is available from a company called Convenience Group. It's their feather-friendly line. So this is a patio of a friend of mine who had issues with birds flying into her patio doors. And so you apply this, it comes in a little roll, and you just apply it in a strip, press it against the window, and then you peel off the back, and the little dots stick onto the window. And she's had it for a number of years. You can wash the window. And so when you're inside looking out, it's pretty unobtrusive. You see the little dots, but you really can see right past them. So this is some examples of that bus wrap type of product that I talked about. This is a product called Kaleidoscape, which is sold through the company, or you can buy it, I think, through the American Bird Conservancy. So it comes in various different colors or patterns. You can have custom patterns made with your logo on it. This one happens to look like white on the outside, but it also comes, I have an example of it being clear on the outside. So it cuts down the glare. It helps for climate control. When you're inside looking out, you can just see right through it. Here's some example in downtown Kalamazoo on a storefront. Just a fun graphic design for Kalamazoo. So this is taken from the sidewalk, looking at the design. When you get up close to it, you can see this dot array. But if you were inside, you would be able to see out. This is a fun design that was done at the University of British Columbia. They had some problem windows, and so a graphic student came up with the design, and this was applied with oil-based markers by some of the students on the outside of the window, of course. Acopian bird savers are another product that is available, which you can also use as a do-it-yourself. So it's just cord that is hung. This is hung at about 4-inch intervals. I would suggest hanging it a little closer. And it's just mounted to the top of the window and hangs loose. It will move with the wind. It will break up the reflection a bit, and birds will be able to see this as an object. Here's some examples from a local nature center in Michigan. So they have applied some homemade Zen wind curtains here on the outside. You can see these vertical cords that are hanging on the outside. When you're inside the building, as you are on the left and looking out, it doesn't obscure the view. They also used a window screen. So if you have windows that don't have a screen, you can just buy a screen and hang it on the outside of your window. And there's even a company that makes screen, that comes with those little suction cups, that you can apply to your window. And if we were meeting in person, I'd have examples of all of these different things on this big table that you could all look at, but it's harder to do by Zoom. There are a number of, in addition to municipalities that have chosen to be bird friendly, there's a number of different universities and colleges that have gone in that direction. I'm going to give some examples from a local college here, Western Michigan University. So I had decided to target the university with my bird friendly message, figuring that was a smaller entity than the whole town and city. And so I was able to enlist the help, and a couple of profs got on board with me on this. And one of them I happened to call on the same day that this is what she encountered on her way into work. So I call this my crime scene photo. So on the left, you see these circles on the ground, which is where the victims were found. And then up here, you see the alleged perpetrator. And the unfortunate victims, of course, are these beautiful cedar waxwings. But there are a lot of these glass enclosed walkways on campus that are notorious for window collisions. So one of the biology and ornithology profs had her classes monitor for bird collisions and identify areas that were problematic. So one of the walkways was mitigated in 2019. A student was very inspired, wrote a grant. The grant was funded, which allowed for the materials and the installation for this particular walkway. And this is what it looks like completed. You can see this was bird tape that was applied in a vertical orientation. This is another walkway that you can see hiding behind all of these trees. This is the stormwater runoff. So there are river birch, there's high bush cranberry, there's a bunch of other native trees that they did a beautiful job planting. And I've been monitoring campus for the last couple of years, and birds would collide most frequently on the side of this walkway facing that vegetation. And lo and behold, another grant was written and funded, and this was just done this year. This is done in the kaleidoscape, the clear kaleidoscape with that dot array. So I don't know if this shows up well on your screen, but you can, from a distance, you can't see anything. Up close, you can see these little dots. And this obviously does not impact the safety of people walking through this walkway. They can see out, people can see in, so the view is not obscured in either direction, but hopefully the birds will see this. So what can you do for free at home? You can close your blinds and your curtains. It does help a little bit. You can move the houseplants away from the windows. You can turn off lights at night or use motion sensors and not have your lights shining out at night all the time. And move your feeders either really onto or very close to the window, because there is no safe distance for a bird feeder from a window. And you are limited only by your imagination. So this is how I save 1 billion birds for $1.98. So you go and you buy yourself a bottle of tempera paint, which used to be $1.98. I haven't priced it recently. With inflation and everything, I might have to change the title of my talk, because maybe it's up to $2.98 or $3.98. But this is tempera paint on the outside of your window. And you know, as I said, I'm not anywhere near as good a photographer as Josh, but I will challenge him to a finger painting contest any day. So if you have some windows that are problematic and you are out of room on your refrigerator for your children's artwork or your grandchildren's artwork, I have a great project for them. Turn them loose on the outside of your windows with a tempera paint. So this will actually last quite a long time. It'll last through a whole season before it kind of starts to flake off and look fuzzy. And you can wash it off with just regular window cleaner when it's time to put on a new design. Unfortunately, my skill as a finger painter is somewhat limited to wiggly lines and fish. So I'm really not much of an artist, but I'm sure a lot of you can come up with something even better than that. But at any rate, some resources that I wanted to share, I've alerted to the American Bird Conservancy quite a bit. They really have focused on this as one of their missions, and they have several staff members. Christine Shepard is the head of that program, and they have several other staff members now on this in this area. And they have a publication called Bird Friendly Building Design. You'll recognize that cover photo there from Vassar. This is available. You can download it. I have hard copies of it, you know, which they will send you, but their website is a resource of all kinds of different information. There's literature references. There are results of all the testing that is done in the testing tunnels. So all of the results of that are available. The resources of manufacturers of these different products, either glass or the products that you would put on as a mitigation strategy. So the ABC Birds is a huge resource that I wanted to share, and I shared another resource with Julie, which is a book that has published recently by Dr. Daniel Clem, who has done a lot of work on bird collisions, and it's called Solid Air, and she's going to put that in the chat for you. So that's kind of the end of my babbling, and I'm going to be quiet and let you see how many questions Julie has collected and how many people got the bird number 1 and bird number 2 identifications correct. So thanks for your attention. I'll turn it over to Julie.
Thank you so much, Gail. I'm just trying to jot down the name of that book for everybody to check out. Solid Air, Invisible Killer, Saving Billions of Birds. From Windows. Sorry, I got a few errors in that. Was trying to type too fast. Well, that was wonderful, Gail. I definitely learned a lot. And we definitely have a bunch of questions for you. So I will jump in. Let's see. Where to begin here? Well, the birds that you put up there, we didn't get a lot of responses. I don't know if you want to go back to that slide, those few slides or not, but the first bird species, I think people were guessing maybe Merlin or Cooper's hawk. Those were 2 suggestions. It looked kind of accipiter-like to me.
It was a Cooper's hawk.
Okay, great.
It was the Cooper's hawk. So
unfortunately, we don't have any fancy prizes for the winner.
Well, you register for the next seminar at no charge.
Perfect. And the second bird you put up there looked kind of Buteo-like. Was it a red shoulder maybe, or red-tailed hawk?
That one actually was also a Cooper's hawk.
Okay.
It wasn't the freshest bird, I have to say, by the time I got the call. So it was a little harder
Okay.
to ID, but
Yeah,
good job, everybody. At least you all knew that they were raptor. So this is very good.
right.
You didn't
They
guess
got
mallard
that
duck.
much, right. Okay, so a few questions from people. Yvonne is wondering, why don't birds see netting like mist nets for banding? Do you have any thoughts on that?
That is a good question, because one of the fixes that you can use on windows is netting. The sort of netting that you might put over, some fruit trees to keep birds from, eating the fruit, or, over plants to keep deer from getting it. I'm thinking that the mist netting is just a lot finer, and maybe because it's also against the backdrop of the trees, where the birds are flying, and it's usually put up early in the morning and in the evening when the light is not as strong. But that is a great question, and I don't know that I have the answer to that. But they are caught for banding, and they obviously don't see that netting as well. So
Right.
might just be finer
Yeah,
netting.
yeah, and it makes sense that, it's not against a structure, so it's going to be more camouflage to them.
Yeah.
On Yvonne also commented about a new building in San Francisco, the Salesforce building, which is the highest in the city, with this massive night lighted cone, which was surprising, and it had me thinking about your slide you had about various ordinances, and how many buildings are really how come, if you could go back to that slide, I'm just wondering, you had a list of mandatory ordinances and then voluntary, and I'm just curious, how common it is for new buildings being constructed to have any kind of ordinance in place or regulations in place. Is this just a sample of what you found?
Yeah, this is probably not a complete list. And San Francisco, like I said, was the first city in the US that legislated bird safe building standards. And their standards are not as strong as a lot of standards that are enacted now. So I'm not familiar with the building that Yvonne mentioned, but hopefully, San Francisco is still enforcing this ordinance, and but perhaps it's not strong enough of an ordinance. And like I said, in San Francisco, they let's see if I can go to this one. They designated the side of the building that faces a park or a water feature of a certain size to be bird friendly. So it doesn't address, the whole rest of the building, and it doesn't address lighting, which is obviously an issue as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's disappointing to hear that, a building that might be problematic, is a new building in San Francisco. I would be asking those questions of the city planners or somebody, in the appropriate department, in that city, of explain to me how this is bird safe.
Right. Yeah, there's clearly, the technology has evolved so much really since years ago, when all you would see really are those Falcon decals on windows, and those kind of evolved into the UV maple leaves, that I tried out, probably a few of you have tried out over the years, and now, hearing about like the Ornolux glass and the custom fritted glass, I wasn't aware of those. seems like we still have a long way to go to get these kind of into mainstream thinking. One question we received is if all birds see UV light.
No, all birds do not see UV light.
Okay.
My understanding is that birds in the pigeon and dove family do not see UV light, which maybe they don't see on the UV spectrum, which might explain why the mourning dove hit my window, despite the decals there, but it did hit between the decals. I used to, and I'm not sure, there's actually some controversy as I was trying to read the literature about what types of birds do and do not see UV light. But it's a fascinating field to do some more reading on, because I think this really explains why birds are attracted to certain flowers, because they will see UV in the flower that we don't see as humans. But I think it also explains how birds choose their mates, because there are a lot of feather patterns on birds. For example, take chickadees, that, to me, a male chickadee looks a lot like a female chickadee. But to a chickadee, they can see differences because they can see ultraviolet, and they can see color differences between different individuals. And I think those are some of the things that come into play when birds are choosing a mate. So as humans, we're like, we've for years tried to figure out, like, oh, it's a redder, chest, or fancier foot moves, or, louder call, or something that, the bird that we can identify. But I think that there's a lot going on that we have no clue about unless we put on our UV glasses and look at the birds the same way. So I wish I knew more, but wish I knew more about it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Michael has a comment. He said that we should know Canadian Standards Association has introduced its bird-friendly building design standard for the province of Ontario for municipalities to adopt when introducing bird-friendly requirements into communities. So he added the link there. He also added that currently there are 19 municipalities in Ontario with bird-friendly requirements, with an additional 9 municipalities preparing to introduce similar standards. So that's hopeful.
That is great. That is great news, because Toronto, of course, has been a leader, in that arena.
Oh, good. Okay. He adds that current standards have increased the minimal height requirements for window markers from 3 to 5 stories.
Good news. Wonderful news. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Another question, is there a way changing the wavelength of the light from the World Trade Memorial would help, or putting some sort of filter would change the properties in any way? Are there any solutions that the city would entertain?
Well, I certainly can't answer that last part of the question. They do turn off the lights, when there is a problem. That's an interesting question about the wavelength of the light. I do know there's studies of communication towers, with, that are lit at night with either red or white lights. And there are certainly differences in lighting. So lights that are intermittent are less problematic than lights that are on solid. And I believe that the red lights are less problematic than the white lights. So, I really don't know. And that's a really great question. So somebody should research that and report back, whether changing the color or the wavelength of light would make a difference. And I suspect that it certainly might, because the birds are attracted to that bright white light, and it's on solid. So they're drawn to it, but then they're just blinded, because they get caught. Just like I talked about us walking down the side of the road, and you just can't see outside that beam of light that's coming at you. If they
Mhm.
turned it on and off a lot, like it was blinking, that might, that would probably help some in and of itself.
Okay. Right.
And I know New York City Audubon is very active in this. They do monitor it. They've got monitors that are there during migration, and they call for the lights to be turned off.
Mhm. That's good. Well, just to comment on, you had some great ideas about what you can do at home, on your own windows, making them safer for birds. I highly recommend the bird-friendly bird tape that comes in rolls, those little, dot array that you showed a picture of. We are using those on all of our south-facing windows. We have great big windows in our house, and we were getting birds hitting all the time. And we've tried various methods, and those were great. So I put a link up in the chat for the bird-friendly website if anybody's interested in trying that. And like you said, the Acopian bird savers, I've seen those. They use those at Hawk Mountain and are very effective and really easy to install. I will just direct people again, check out that ABC Birds website. It's really fabulous. Lots of information and resources. It was interesting to read about some of the research they're doing that you talked about, and how they evaluate different products. They have a great blog, so just lots of resources. And it made me think of our conservation and education committee at Humana, and that could be an issue that we could get into, just learning more about and educating people. So I'm going to suggest that to our committee. I think that is it. I think that's what we had for questions. But we definitely got a lot of comments from people thanking you, thinking this was just very informative and a great presentation. So I really want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us and educate us.
Well, and thank you for sharing your lunch hour with me, and for your interest in all of the comments and dialogue. So I really appreciate that. Let's see. Am I still in presentation view?
You are not. Go ahead and hit. Yeah.
Oh, what do I need to do?
From current slide on the left-hand side. Yep, there you go.
Oh,
yeah,
there we
thank
go.
you so much, Gail. Just to echo
Thanks.
what Julie said, it was a wonderful talk. I think it's my third time hearing it, and I still learned some things. Thank you again, Gail. Appreciate you giving us your lunch hour time, but more than that, all the time that you do to prepare for a well produced talk as well. So thank you for that. Next month, we're excited to be welcoming Dr. Trish Miller and Mike Lanzone, who will be talking to us about golden eagles. And so I know that'll be a popular one. And so we look forward to welcoming you back. Please don't fail to forget that programs like this are only brought to you because of supporting donors and members such as yourself. So if you enjoyed today, please take a moment to go to our support page and think about providing some support to help keep programs like this going. So thanks again to everybody for joining us. I hope you all have a very good rest of your day, and we will see you next month.